Hello. This is another traditional story. If you go to if you're on the YouTube channel and you go to video, you'll get a whole list of over 50 videos I've done. But most of them are my original stories. I've just started getting into doing a few more of the traditional stories I know. The last one, Macan and the Selkies, was one, but there were a couple at the very beginning. Anansi and the Giant Snake was one, and I think the very second one I did, but I can't remember what it was. No, it wasn't. That was Fairy Doors. Oh, Yanni's Dragon. That's a traditional story. Of course, when you tell them for real, they never come out quite the same twice, but we'll see how this comes out. The story of a very brave man, sometimes called my Lord Bag of Rice. In a distant country where there are mountains and valleys, a man had been visiting friends across the mountain and was returning home. And as he came to the saddle between two mountains, there was a large lake. He went to walk around the lake, but flowing into the lake from the mountain peak was a rapid river, fed by the melting snows above, icy cold. So, it was all right though. There was a bridge. He knew this. Lying on the bridge, right across the bridge, so that it filled the entire bridge and its tail snuck out at the other side, was a very large dragon. That made the man stop for a moment. He thought about his options. If he turned to his right, he could walk upstream. If he turned to his left, he could walk around the mountain. But he knew that there was another stream on the other side, which, although it wasn't as heavy as this one, had no bridge. And to walk upstream far enough to be able to cross the river would take him an extra day by the time he'd walked back again. He thought about home and getting home and all the reasons why he wanted to be home, how important it was to him. And he took a decision. Putting his bow and arrows together with their quiver across his shoulders, he stepped forward and, lifting up his kimono, he stepped on the paw of the dragon. Very gently, and very gently, he walked up the dragon's arm, across its shoulder, down its back, and stepped off its tail on the other side. Okay, and he started off down the road. But he hadn't gone 5 paces, and a voice behind him said, "Sir, a word. He turned, and there stood on the bridge was what looked like a man. Except he wasn't stood on the bridge. He was stood just above the bridge. He wasn't a man. He was a dragon, because he wore a dragon's crown floating just above his head. But thus a dragon can almost assume a man's form. "I mean you no harm," said the dragon, "but I have a very grave problem, and only a brave man can fix it for me. You are obviously a very brave man. Would you do me the honour of coming with me? And I'll show you." The man thought for a second. You don't refuse a dragon when he talks about you honouring him. So he went along, and together they walked down to the side of the lake, and there was a willow tree growing in the lake, just on the edge, as they do, with its roots into the water. And the dragon pointed down at the water and pointed up at the tree and said, "Pick a leaf." The man picked a leaf. He said, "Throw it into the lake." Underneath the tree, the water was absolutely calm, and a small leaf landed on the calm water, and the ripples came out and out and out, and the man felt himself falling into the water, and then he was under the water with the Dragon King. The Dragon King took him down to his kingdom at the bottom of the lake, and he fed him a banquet, a wonderful meal, served on platters made from the mother of pearl from inside shells. And when they had finished the banquet, he took the brave man with him and said, "Come, now I shall show you our nursery." And they went to the back of the palace, and there was, as it were, a huge plate of bees, except in each hexagon, which was far bigger than a bee would make, there was not a bee, but a baby dragon developing, pupating from a larva. And in the lower ones there were larval dragons developing. He said, "See, these are my children. Every night, look at the top corner there, and look, all the hexagonal cells have been destroyed, and in one corner." He said, "Every night, this millipede comes down the mountain, and he dives into the lake, and he eats my babies, and nothing I can do will stop him. What can we do?" I've consulted, and I've looked, and I'm told that a very brave man can fire an arrow that will stop him. And the brave man said, I have arrows. I have 5. I fired one to catch a rabbit for my supper and missed, for which I thank you very much for the banquet, sir. But we can but try. And that evening they went out onto the edge of the lake, and the brave man took cover beside a rock where he could draw his bow. And sure enough, as the dusk came, there came thundering down the mountainside, almost like an express train, a huge millipede, and in the centre of its forehead was a blinding, glowing eye. The brave man took his bow and drew it and fired. And it hit the millipede in the centre of his eye, but it glanced off. Again and again and again he tried, until at last he had only 1 arrow left. And the Dragon King leaned in close to him and said, I was once told that there is power in the spittle of a brave man. And the brave man looked at the arrow and spat on it and put it in his bow and drew it and fired, and the arrow hit the millipede bang in the centre of its one luminous eye, and the luminosity went out, and the millipede dropped over dead and skidded for yards on the ground, coming to rest just before it reached the brave man. And for years afterwards, where the millipede's body had skidded along in the dirt, scraping itself to pieces, nothing grew, and the dirt washed clean to rock and sand. Meanwhile, however, the Dragon King was somewhat pleased with the brave man, as you can imagine. And he said, Thank you so much. I'm sorry I have delayed you on your way, but I will give you 2 presents, and hopefully they will help you. They are these. They are a pot of rice, and they are a roll of silk, and they will never run out. And the brave man took the pot of rice and the roll of silk, and he thanked, and he said goodbye, and he set off across down the rest of the mountain to his valley where he lived, and his family were waiting, anxious because he was late. But he had a wonderful story to tell. And while it was telling, they had a good meal out of the rice pot. And when they looked, it was still full. And then the man gave his wife the roll of silk and said, "Cut everybody in new kimonos. Let's all dress in silk." And she did. And she came back and she said, "There is a wonderful thing. I've cut new kimonos for everybody, and yet the bolt of silk is the same size." And the brave man smiled and said, "Never mind, let's have a bowl of rice." And he became a trader in silk and lived very happily and grew to have quite a stomach with all the rice he ate. Thank you. Don't forget to tell people that I'm here. I'm probably not as assiduous about it myself as I should be. Bye-bye.